if you truly wish to be.
She has such a sweet quality to her voice, doesn't she? It just sort of opens the heart up. And what I love about that song is that's really, because remember, within the book, we're looking at what in Buddhism is called the six perfections, but we're looking at them within the framework of our power of imagination to actually bring them into time and in space. And it was just a beautiful reminder. I love that. Dream with me. And really what Norman Fischer is inviting us into with this book is this idea of dreaming a world that truly works for everyone. And that as we dream it, we get to make it real. And that's the piece that makes Unity's teaching unique and sometimes challenging. That there's no magic Santa Claus God who's just gonna wave their magic wand and, or I dream of Jeannie, right? I'm dating myself here, right? But, and just dunk, and the world is gonna work for everybody. It's going to happen because of us, because we're willing to dream something into reality. So we're looking at joyful effort. So here are the six perfections. Generosity, ethical conduct, patience. Today it's joyful effort. Next week will be meditation, and the last week is understanding and wisdom. And so if you want to know more about the other perfections, they are available on our YouTube channel, my talks from the previous weeks. But the framework that we're holding this all in is that we are all bodhisattvas, and by that he means that we're all little Buddhas, like we're Buddhas in training, right? I always get this image of Buddha on a tricycle whenever I say that, but we're Buddhas in training. And it aligns with what we in Unity understand to be the Christ consciousness, this eternal cosmic principle of love that we are being invited to step into. And so the Bodhisattva's call is to practice compassion and be devoted to the benefit of others. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, one of the shadow aspects of New Thought teaching is that we can become very self-absorbed because we know it's an inside job, and we know that we have to do the work here. And sometimes we think that that in and of itself is enough. And what I want to remind all of us is that our work is actually to be it in time and in space, not just in our own little cocooned experience. Does that make sense to everyone? And this is why joyful effort is so important. So, Norman Fischer describes it this way: joy arises from recognizing the preciousness of life and the gratitude that comes from being alive. The preciousness of life and the gratitude that comes from being alive. And it's our practice of joyful effort that it's about an energetic activity in pursuit of goodness. I just loved that. Because can you feel how active it is? It's not about just sitting. It's about actually being something. And it's propelled by love. It's propelled by love, not power, right? And not desire. And we're going to talk about that later, right? How we can use our desire to support us. So I love this quote from Theodore Roosevelt, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. Let's just breathe that for a moment, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. Now, that might be true for ourselves. We might be feeling pretty good about something, and then we look at what we did in comparison to somebody else, and all of a sudden we don't feel so good about what we were doing. But it's also comparing other people. It's the comparison that we project outward onto the world. It's actually stealing our joy as well. And at the Marin Interfaith Breakfast in May, I was one of the speakers there, and so was Abbot Giroux from the Green Gulch Farm. And he spoke to this, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it really resonated with me. He said something along the lines of, it's not verbatim, comparison and categorizing are rooted in dualism and require us to separate from the whole. This is the part that stopped me. They are an act of violence to the wholeness of reality. An act of violence to the wholeness of reality. Whenever we are purposefully engaging in something that is about separation, it is actually an act of violence to ourselves, to the world, to the truth of what reality is. So, how we hold this in unity is that we understand that we have our human experience. Anybody in here having a human experience? I'm having one this morning, let me tell you. So what our human experience is, right, is the visible world, what we can touch and taste and see. It's the things that happen within us, like transitions, the loss of a job, the gaining of a grandchild, the fact that we're growing older. It's pain, it's success, it's all those things that are just sort of happening in time and in space. And we can have a lot of focus on those things. What we're invited to in unity is to understand that the truth and the absolute and wholeness are always there, right? You see them there, but they don't have our focus. Instead, we're focused on our humanness. But what if we flip that? What if the focus is on the truth and the absolute and the wholeness and love and joy? And it doesn't mean that we still don't experience loss, and it doesn't mean that we still don't experience pain. But can you feel how just the perspective shift can allow us to realign in a different way? So, we are divine humans. Now, how Norman Fisher talks about it in the book is he calls it binocular vision. That our human perspective is one-eyed and it lacks depth. And our divine understanding is our second eye. And that sees potential and wholeness and oneness. And what we're invited to be is have this binocular vision. So that we aren't dismissing our pain or ignoring it or, right, diminishing it or trying to separate ourselves out from our humanness. What we're invited to do is take our humanness and bring it into this larger understanding of truth. And our joy, that's where it arises from. Our joy arises from the wholeness that we are. That energy, how many people in here have ever been in the midst of some project and the amount of energy you have is just boundless because it's fueling itself. It's not like you're actually generating the energy is generating itself. Anybody in here ever experienced that? Anybody in here ever experienced stepping into a project and being completely depleted and being drained? And having nothing. So our joy and our energy is arising from our understanding of wholeness, which is always available to us. And this process, if you've experienced it, even in the smallest piece, you know that it's regenerative. Like you're on a roll. That's how we describe it, right? Oh, I'm on a roll. Everything's just kind of going and flowing, and I don't have to effort, and I don't have to push. Everything's just kind of moving through me. But we're not passive in this process. We are active participants. This is something that we know in unity, that we are creators. We are an active participant in what it is that is happening. We have free will. We have choice. And so my question would be, Are you participating in life from a consciousness of wholeness? Or are you participating in life from your focus being all on the human experience? So he just calls it laziness. I would call it spiritual laziness, right? He says, and I love this, laziness is a deep-seated avoidance of what we most need to address in our lives. Everyone laugh at that, right? In recognition, right? All suffering arises from a false sense of separation. That's all of our pain, all of our suffering. The suffering is there because we feel separate, we feel alone, we feel disconnected. That is the need that we all need to most address in our life. Our understanding of our innate wholeness and our understanding that that wholeness isn't just ours. That wholeness is everywhere. So he goes on to say, and I changed the language of it, but it made me laugh. He says, most of us are not lazy in how much we do. We are lazy about anchoring all we do in love and wholeness and being a benefit to others. Most of us are doing a lot. Most of us have long to-do lists. Most of us have got all kinds of things happening. Most of us can feel sometimes distracted or discouraged, or all of that is because we're not anchoring ourselves in the wholeness that we actually are, and in the wholeness that everyone we're interacting with is. So, pleasure is not the same as joy. I know, it sucks, right? Wouldn't it be nice if pleasure and joy were actually synonymous? But they're not. And we mistake pleasure for joy. We do that all the time. Pleasure is what we experience in our human self. Joy is what our divine self understands about the true nature of life itself. Can you feel the difference? Pleasure is based on what is happening in an experience, and if that experience doesn't go the way you want, then guess what? Your pleasure goes away. Joy is independent of circumstance. It doesn't, and I give this example all the time. I remember when I was standing at my father's bedside as we were getting ready to unplug the machines. It was the most painful thing, and it was absolute joy at the same time to know that his suffering was over, right? It was over. And so there was this sweetness to that moment that had nothing to do with my pain, right? That we're capable of sort of holding all of this. So happiness isn't even the same as joy. Happiness is what happens in our human experience, and happiness comes and goes. I'm inviting us to understand joy as something that never shifts. It's always available to us. It's always available to us, always. It's so hard sometimes to remember that. So one way you can tell is that pleasure decreases the more we indulge in it. Right? Think about how you have one glass of wine, and that might be very pleasurable, but by the time you get to 5 or 6, it's not quite so pleasurable, and the next day is even worse. Joy increases the more we practice it. The more we practice joy, the more joy we have. Joy is about not being focused on feeling satisfied because of what we did. Joy itself is the satisfaction. It's kind of like practice is perfect. Joy is itself what we get to feel satisfaction for. Now, can you feel how that would help keep you energized? And how that would help keep you moving? One of the things he talks about in this book are these little dolls, which I did have a picture of, but I'm trying to keep service on time this Sunday, so I was cutting slides this morning. But they look like, remember Weebles that wobble, but they don't fall down? Remember those guys? So these little dolls are kind of like that. They're weighted on the bottom, and they kind of roll around and flop around and roll around and flop around, and they never fall down. The energy of the fall is what actually brings them back up again. That's joy. You're not always going to be happy, but you can always be anchored in joy. Can you feel the difference? So, he talks a little bit about desire, and I think it's important because this idea of pleasure, I think, really consumes us. We like things to be satisfying right now, in this moment. How many of us in here love our little check boxes when we get something done off of our to-do list? So he talks about desire being something that's natural, it's biological, we don't have to hate it. But our human sense of desire is always trying to grasp and cling to pleasure. What we want. This is what I want. And we grasp at it and we cling to it. And it's never satisfied. We can look at the world and see that this understanding of honoring our desire has led to a world where there are people starving while other people have way too much. Because there's never enough when we give in to our human desire, when it stays on that plane in the manifestation world. And it depletes our resources and our energy. It actually doesn't renew itself. So he talks about the practice of joyful effort transmutes and cultivates selfish desire, and by that he means when it's just focused on what I need, what I want, to a desire for love and compassion for all, ourselves included. When we talk about being of benefit to everyone, it's like the secret sauce. When we are showing up in benefit to everyone, guess what? We're not separate from that. We actually are showing up also in service to ourselves. So he calls it the divine paradox, that unselfishness is the ultimate selfishness. That by showing up and looking beyond our small self, we experience more love, more connection, more compassion. And as we genuinely care for and support others, guess what happens? We get cared for. We get supported. And we talked about this a little bit when we talked about generosity, right? That we don't give to get something. This isn't about a transaction. I'm going to give you this, and then I'm going to get that. It's not even a transaction with God. I hear people say sometimes, like, well, I'll give this to you, God, and then you'll give me that. We're not talking about this in terms of a transactional agreement. We're talking about giving freely, giving with no expectation, just with the grounded awareness that of course it's going to return to us, and it may never return to us from the source that we gave to, but we're all one. So it'll come to us in a completely different way. When we're not paying attention to that, we are actually making ourselves small. Can you feel that? When we have to have it, I want this and you're going to give me that. All of a sudden, everything gets really small. Everything about joyful efforting is, can you feel it? I was on my call. There's a group of practitioners from Agape who I have been meeting with one Saturday morning a month for the past 20 years. And one of those practitioners in the middle of our prayer work said, let's all take a rejuvenating breath. And I was like, oh, that's joy. Not just about breathing because we have to breathe, that's transactional. But breathing consciously as rejuvenation. Can you feel the difference in that? Can you feel how the rejuvenating breath is going to source us and resource us and allow us to move forward? Whereas if we're just like, okay, just breathe, just breathe. How many people can say that to yourself sometimes? Just take a breath, just take a breath. Can we shape that in a way that we're actually accessing wholeness and light and love? And can you feel how it's not really that what you do might be any different, but the consciousness that you're doing it from is where the transformational experience happens. So wholeness equals integrity, right? If something is whole, it has integrity. It's not broken up, it's not in pieces, it has integrity. And so joyful efforting is asking us to be in integrity, to be whole. So a big part of why I picked this book is because of the practices, right? We get to practice something concrete. And so this is one area where you can practice this week. You can notice when your impulses do not align with love. I would say notice when your impulses don't align with abundance. How many times do we say, I don't have enough time? There isn't enough time. There is an abundance of time. There truly is. It may not fit into your timeline, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an abundance of time. Notice when you choose to counter your heart. We know that feeling, right? Your heart is telling you to do one thing, and your mind is telling you, but no. I can't do that. It'll make me too vulnerable. It'll make me seem weak. Somebody might take advantage. We have a whole narrative that we put in place, right? So just notice it. And this isn't to say that we can't have healthy boundaries. I want to be really clear. We get to have healthy boundaries. We get to engage with our heart and try to figure out, is our heart feeling this way because of childhood patterns, because of our own sense of not enough, right? This is about an inner experience, but you want to notice when things seem to be incongruous. Notice any desire to deceive yourself or others. My wife always laughs at me because I honestly don't know how to lie. I don't know how to do it, and really, I used to be really good at it, at lying. And it hurt. Talk about violence, right? Violence to the wholeness. And so I don't even really know how to do it successfully or clearly. And it doesn't always help me that I don't know how to lie. I've had to learn how to be honest and kind. I've had to learn how to be authentic and compassionate. Can you feel that? Right? But that doesn't mean that I haven't also at times deceived myself about where I am, about how far I've come, about what's important. We all have blinders on. We all cannot see the wholeness of who we are. So just notice that impulse. Notice the impulse for deception. Small deceptions, little white lies, small deceptions, and big ones, right? And those big ones where it can be a deception to not be telling somebody about something. Can you feel that? That can be a deception because you're not allowing yourself the wholeness that you are. Now, remember when we first were coming up with our core values, can you feel how this is all about authenticity? This is all our core value of authenticity. And I remember there was a group of people that were very concerned about that word choice because they didn't want it to be used in a way that gave permission for people to be jerks, right? And we've all experienced this. I need to tell you what I feel. I need to be honest with you about what a jerk you are. Right? We've all been on the other end of that. That is not what I'm talking about. Is everybody clear? I'm not talking about blaming somebody else for something. I'm not talking about making anybody wrong. This is where we have to engage in the place where we aren't separate from the person who we're connected to, who we're talking to, who we're in relationship with. We may be having our own feelings, and that's our inner work. Nobody can make you feel something. Breathe into that. Because we tell people that all the time. You made me so angry. No, they didn't make you angry. They said something that triggered you. Can you feel the difference there? Now, you get to decide that if there is somebody in your world who is continually dismissing you or diminishing you or making you small or not listening to you, I mean, the list can go on, right? They don't have to be in your world, immediate world, but are they in your world? Yeah. They can't be shoved out completely. So we get to do the work for ourselves, and that should be a joyful effort. That should be about connection. That should be about love. That should be about compassion. That should be about letting go of the comparisons and the judgments and allowing yourself to show up in a way that creates a space for transformation between you and potentially for them. You're not in charge of their journey. But can you feel how we are being invited into something bigger than our small little needs? We're being invited to pay attention to the larger picture. Notice what choices deplete you. You know what those things are. That when you do them, you come out the other end of it and you're like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted. Now, it doesn't mean that there are things in life we have to do, people. I mean, there was this whole thing around like, do what you love and the rest will follow, right? There's this whole like sunny rainbow kittens and butterfly thing that if I just do what I love, I don't have to ever do anything that I don't really want to do. Can you feel how that's only about your small sense of self? I do what I love, and that is going to require me to be an active participant in life. And there are going to be times when I'm going to have to move through things that are challenging. There are times when I'm going to have to move through things that I don't necessarily want to do, but they are in service to the larger good. And because of that, they don't deplete me. But I have to hold that consciousness. If I'm not anchoring my own actions in that consciousness, then yeah, we get resentful, we get angry, we can feel depleted. Chris has been recovering, and I made an intention for myself that whatever she needed, I was going to say yes immediately. Right? Like, that's a hard position to be in when you're recovering from something and you can't do something on your own. And so anytime she asked for something, I would say, absolutely, right? Yep, you got it. You got it right now. Okay, you want it now? Let me do it for you right now. Didn't matter what was going on in my world. And you know what? It was such a joy. I mean, I really want to be clear. Like, it was a joy to show up like that. She was kind of in shock. She kept saying, I'm sorry. I kept saying, stop apologizing. This is good. This is good to be a benefit to others. I'm actually not being drained by this. Can you feel that energy? That it's really about where you come from, not what it is that you're necessarily doing. We got to live from wholeness and act from love. That is where our joyful effort becomes something that we can look forward to. Lucille actually has a lot. The fundraising team, Monica, Lucille, and Nancy, have been modeling joyful effort with this auction. They're just energized by it all. It's a lot of work, but they have been living in this joyful effort of, we're doing this for the community, we're doing this, and getting it. It's like, and they're, as far as I know, they're not exhausted yet, right? Because it's feeding them. We have a lot of fun on those fundraising meetings, which unfortunately I had to miss a bunch, but because it's a joyful effort. That's what I want to invite all of us into. So how do we support our joy? Meditation and affirmative prayer, and we're going to talk more about meditation next week. Regular exercise. If you are feeling like you can't access your joy, go exercise. Even if it's just to walk up and down a flight of stairs, do something, right? These bodies are meant to be in motion. Connect with nature. Combine the exercise and connecting with nature. Go take a hike or go walk to a park and sit on the bench, right? Practice gratitude and appreciation. Remember, we said that joy arises from our recognition of the preciousness of life. Just be grateful. Even if your entire world is falling apart, and I have shared this, I would sit there. My world fell apart. And I literally could not get out of bed. I was so emotionally wrought. And I would practice gratitude. And sometimes all I could be grateful for was that my breath was breathing for me. I was grateful I didn't have to think about it, that it was happening, right? Look for the places of gratitude and appreciation. And then you got to revel and delight in what is. And I know that what is may not be what you want, but revel and delight in what is. I mean, Chris and I were able to have so much more time together. It was great. We connected in different ways. We supported each other in different ways. Read an inspiring book. Seek out support and encouragement. Find a prayer chaplain. Come talk to me. Go to a therapist. Get together with your friends who you know are going to support your wholeness. That part is very important. Don't get together with a bunch of friends and just get into a little bitch fest, right? You want to have friends that are going to support you in anchoring joy and anchoring your autonomy to choose joy. And then really notice what energizes you. What gives you juice? So in the last slide, we were looking at what drains us, but pay as much attention to what energizes you. Because you want to, guess what? Do more of that. Right? Those are the things that are going to help you to be able to stay anchored in the understanding of our true nature and our true name. So let's take this into a time of meditation. This idea of joyful efforting. So as we step into the meditation field, I know that there probably is something that maybe arised for you that feels like it would be impossible to approach with joyful efforting. So we're going to breathe. We're going to recognize in this moment that there's nothing we need to do or become, that joy is our divine inheritance right now. And that we are being invited to breathe that joy. Reminding ourselves of the preciousness of all life. Reminding ourselves of the preciousness of our life. Of our beloved's life. Of the life that is this entire planet. And centering in that space that is the limitless wellspring of love and light. It's not ours, it's all. So it is an infinite resource, an infinite. You can never drain it. So feel yourself opening into all the ways that you can be resourced and renewed. And as you rest in this space of possibility and wholeness and love, just allow one thing that you know is a task you have to do. And just as we rest in the silence, I'm just going to invite you to sit with how are you being invited to shift so that you can bring this centered wholeness, this joyful efforting to whatever that task might be. So let's just rest here for a few moments in the silence. How good it is to be still and know that joy is our true nature and true name, and that we can access it and share it and move and breathe and choose from it. There is no task that is too overwhelming for that inner awareness of joy and love. And so I see and I know that we are all going forth knowing that this process of integrating joy in our activities, that this is just unfolding for all of us in perfect time, in perfect order, not our time in our heads, but that divine timing. And that we can rest in that. The clarity always can make itself known. And that we're just open and available to bringing this innate capacity for joyful effort to everything and anything that we are being invited to do. Just standing in gratitude and awe, gratitude and appreciation for the preciousness that is life. And so it is. Amen. Ashe.